League this for life. Yeah, 100.
Should trades be vetoed in your fantasy league? It's a serious one now, so I'm gonna break this down for you real quick. Psych? No, I'm not. Hell nah, you shouldn't be vetoing no trades in no fantasy league. For what? A commissioner about lame as hell if he vetoing trade. What do you want, some power? Want to be cool? Feel like you the man? Vetoes are boring. I'm a commissioner in the league with my partner. A couple weeks ago, one of the dudes in the league gave up Javonte Williams for Nelson Aguilar. Funny, right? I ain't gonna veto it. I damn sure laughed at him, but that's besides the point. Unless you got a team that like 10-2, trading with a team that's 2-10, and little buddy want to give up Alvin Kamara to his little girlfriend who also in the league because he want to be cute, and he take David Johnson and the rest of the bench players. It should be a go. It got to be outrageous collusion. They veto trades in your leagues, get out. Matter of fact, if your commissioner named Vito, get out. Sorry to everybody named Vito, but I'm on one right now. You should get a 5-year fantasy football ban if you veto trade. Do not do it. It is for the weak. Fantasy football is for the strong, and it's supposed to be fun.
Yo, VIP. Let's kick it. Ice, ice, baby.
Hello, League. Welcome back to the show, the FWO show. I am your host, Jeffro the Lion. We have week 4 in the books now. We have a few things that shook up on us. Not too much, though. Nothing too dramatic. We did have an injury happen, technically in week 5 on Thursday night, that is going to be very impactful to its owner. That's Russell Wilson. Only gave James 8 points for the week, and he is going to be out for about the same amount of weeks. Anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks is what we're seeing so far. So what we're going to talk about first is just a recap of week 4 and what happened. So getting right from the start, we're on location. We're in Pittsburgh for the Broncos and Steelers game. James, Craig, and I. So we'll be watching that live. So you'll notice the surroundings a little bit different this time. We're in a remote studio. We're going to have a special guest in that remote studio as well. So looking at week 4, we'll start with my matchup that I had with Dan. I wind up squeaking out a win by 4 points over Dan. Would have been a huge win for Dan at this point. Would have been crushing for myself. Instead, I do hold on, go 2-2. Dan is down at 1-3 at the bottom of the standings right now. Still early enough to where he can change things around and hoping to get some guys producing that aren't doing so for him already. Key to victory for myself, Saquon Barkley, looking like Saquon Barkley. 25 points for him. The unfortunate thing for Dan, which really probably cost him the matchup, is Logan Thomas goes out in the first quarter. 0 points. So Logan Thomas stays in that full game. He is more than likely money down. I'll bet you a paycheck on it. He's going to go ahead and get you those 4 points and probably end up with somewhere around 7 to 10. So that hurt Dan. Just terrible timing for the injury. It's never good timing for any injury, but to get injured before you can give your team anything at all, it's the worst. So unfortunate for Dan, fortunate for me, and that's what matters. So second matchup, Russ and Gary. In this particular case, Russ ends up winning by 10 points over Gary. Russ is key, as always. It's almost not even worth mentioning that he's a key because it's a no-brainer. It's Derrick Henry. Excuse me. I keep saying Travis. I'm living in the past with Travis Henry. Derrick Henry gets 24 points for Russ. And the more important key is the guy that, there was maybe some high hopes for coming into the year, but not quite these high of hopes. And that's DJ Moore. Gets him 26 points. So huge for Russ. DJ Moore even hits his average, which I think is somewhere around 12 and a half, something like that so far this year, maybe even a hair higher. Russ loses the matchup. So as it stands, DJ Moore is the difference and the ultimate X factor for Russ in that game. Gary, the downsides for him that did not help one bit at all. He's got Ruggs for his Raiders. He's got OBJ for the Browns, and they combined for less than 10 points together. They're at about 9.5 points between the two of them. So that alone is just everything adds up, mounts up, and it gets you lost. So not a recipe for success. The third matchup to talk about, the Gooch beats James by 25. So he beats him walking away, handles him handily. And his key figure in that matchup is a guy that was a high-rated receiver, but I don't think we expected him to be this high of a rated receiver. At this point, he could very well finish as a top 4 receiver on the year, and that's Scary Terry. He ends up with 23 points for him. So Terry McLaurin, 23 points. Craig wins by 25. That's a key factor for him. And then the key piece of shit for James, Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin gets him a whopping 0.3 points. So, it's practically an Animal House grade point average. Josh and Grubb, next matchup for you. Josh ends up taking care of Grubb, beats him by 27 points, throws Nettie George on him. And the key factor for Josh, it's kind of the same line as what we just talked about with Craig, and maybe even more so. Deebo Samuel. we definitely had less expectations for Debo than we have for Terry. Debo gets 26 big points for him. Josh wins by 27. There's the math. So the other people that he had, Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris, both had 19 points apiece for him. So just a balanced attack for Josh at this point, and he's slowly climbing up the rankings. Watch out for Josh. His points are steadily climbing. They're a nice place. So you'll kind of see that a little bit on the matchup rankings that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. That he's consistently getting the points. So I like the direction Josh is heading. Good for him. Next matchup, Chris Martin beats Joe, gives Joe his first loss. If I'm not mistaken, I think Chris just got his first win last week. So Chris is at 2-0 now the last 2 weeks. And he beats Joe by 46 smackaroos. So drops 46 on him. Patrick Mahomes with 38 points. Clyde Edwards-Helaire with 19 points. So key factors for him. For Joe, it was bound to happen. His age is maybe catching up to him. It was just a weird emotional matchup for him. I never thought that I would see Tom Brady be affected by the situation, and that's kind of what happened. Returned to Foxborough, had the rain. He winds up with 7 points. So Joe loses by 46, first loss to the year, and doesn't score much either, so that doesn't help in the matchup rankings either. So final matchup, TJ against Keegan. TJ ends up beating Keegan by 17 points. Key factor for TJ, Austin Eckler, a guy that I was really high on coming into the draft, was hoping to get in there at 12. Didn't necessarily expect him to be there, but I was hoping for him to be there for me. Gets him 28 points. So 28 for Eckler. TJ wins by 17. And I think it might be back-to-back weeks, but I'm not sure. DeAndre Swift, 7 points for Chris. And I think he's going to continue to be an X factor for Chris. If DeAndre Swift can't go out there and get him double digits every week, Chris could be in trouble. I'm sorry, Keegan. I said Chris. Keegan, if he cannot go out there and get him double digits, that's going to be trouble for Keegan moving forward. That's his RB2, and he needs him. Traded away Chris Carson, but right now that's not looking like it was not going to hurt him. So good trade it's turning out to be for Keegan so far, at least on that front, with the Carson for Waller trade. Average margin of victory this week lined up almost exactly with what last week's was. So I think we're finding our sweet spot as far as what the average margin of victory will be. 21-point average margin of victory for this week. Last week was 22 points. Week 2, we had a spike at 33 points. Week 1 was 19. So 19, 22, 21. We're going to be right in that area probably for the average margin of victory. So right around that 20-point mark. And that's what I expect to see going forward. So where does that put us with the standings? The standings, we still have Craig undefeated. I am certainly hoping to witness firsthand, and I'll record some footage if that happens tomorrow, him take that L along with the Broncos beating the Steelers. I'm hoping to see that coincide. So that's what I'm really just hoping on. But we'll see. He's dominating right now, 593 points. He is, roughly 34 points ahead of the next closest person, which is TJ. Right around 50 points exactly. 50 points ahead of myself, who sits in third. So just to give you an idea of where we're at on the point standings. So Craig again, 4-0. We have him playing the number 2 this week, Russ, and our matchup of the week. Russ is currently favored in that matchup by a few. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Joe dropped to third at 3-1. We have TJ, myself, Chris, Josh, James, all at 2-2. And then we have the bottom of the pack all at 1-3. Keegan, Grubby, Darb, and Dan in that order from 9th through 12th at 1-3. So that's where we stand right now. The thing to talk about again with Joe, the thing that caught my eye is that he's in third place like we mentioned. It may be a matchup specific thing that's gotten him this far because he's in 10th place in points, but he's third place in the actual league standings. So something to keep an eye on. If he were to drop a game or two, points aren't going to save him in a tiebreak. That could be a key factor. We'll see how that plays out for him. But looking at our new matchup standings and how we fared last week, again, the matchup rankings, the matchup standings, these results are based on how many people you would have beaten that given week, and then we have the cumulative total for the entire year. So first place this past week was TJ, scored 159 points, 11-0 for him. Second place we had Chris at 148 points, goes 10-1. And third we had Josh at 139. Fourth place we had Keegan at 132. Fifth place Craig at 127. Myself in 6th at 120, just under 122. And then on down the list there, we have Dan, Russ, 9th place Grubby, 10th place Joe, 11th place Darb, and 12th place this week, Zombie Jim, who as we speak is currently in the shower after taking his first shit in 3 days. So, standings for the year, our updated standings. Craig remains in first place at 33-11 for his matchup rankings. TJ climbs 2 spots, goes to 31-13. I stay in third place at 28-16. Russ drops 2 spots to 27 and 17. Chris up 4 spots to 22 and 22. Josh, who I mentioned a minute ago, he climbs 3 spots, along with Keegan, who climbs 2 spots, both at 21 and 23. Grubby at 19 and 25 drops 3 spots. Joe, 18 and 26, drops 4 spots. He is now down to 10th place. James drops 5 big spots after going 0 and 11, and he is now at 16 and 28. Our buddy Dan moves up 1 spot, 15 and 29. Progress is progress. Darb drops 3 spots, takes up the rear at 13 and 31. So that's where we're at with our matchup rankings right now. If we're looking at our actual rankings themselves, we see that it lines up for Craig, who is in first place in both. Russ, 2nd and 4th in those 2 standings. Myself, 5th and 3rd. So they're all kind of right in line. The only one that really drops is Joe being in 3rd place in the real life standings and dropping down to, what did I say here? Down to 9th place, 9th place. So 3rd in one, 9th place in the other. And you see how that kind of shakes out, and it kind of really shows you the importance of the matchup. So you might have a good week with a good matchup. Maybe I do this week, maybe I don't. I'm playing Grubby. He's a powerhouse. Anywho, next topic, we're going to go over our top dogs. So the top dogs from the road. Enjoy. We'll be back in just a moment with our special guest.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to you live from the road today. That's right, it's top dogs on the road. And we've got a few co-pilots here. There he is. That's right, Zombie Jim. And behind us we've got Sleepy Dan, that's right. So a little bit of a different setup today. No projector style. So Russ, you won't have to complain about that. You can SMD and STFU. Let's get into top dogs. Week 4. Now, I want to clarify something for you guys. Top dogs is not about who balled out last week, okay? Top dogs is a running tally of who's the best in the league at each position. Let's fill out a roster. Yeah. So, quarterback. Last week we had Tom Brady. Bumped down to number 3. In the top spot, Patrick Mahomes. That's right, you guessed it. The number 1 quarterback drafted, Patrick Mahomes, has regained the top dog number 1 seat. As for running back, we've got 2 consecutive repeat winners, Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler. Going to wide receiver, we have another repeater, Cooper Kupp. Joining him, my new teammate, Tyreek Hill. At tight end, a 2-weeker, Travis Kelce. No surprise there. But it is tightening up at the top. We got Darren Waller and Dawson Knox coming in hot. Watch out. At our flex spots, we've got Ezekiel Elliott. Maybe you heard of him. And Cordero Patterson. Pretty sure that guy retired about 10 years ago with the Vikings, but evidently he's still alive. Kicker, we bumped out Dan Carlson, and we've got the all-time GOAT, Justin Tucker. Defense, the Saints blew it big time, and Buffalo took their spot at the top. And for IDP, we've got Grubb again with the top guy, Roquan Smith, and me coming in with free agency move, picking up Mr. How many has he got? 5 interceptions. Trayvon Diggs. Yes, everybody's favorite dad from the Cowboys. That's right. So still missing this week on this list, Daniel, Gary Darby, James, Josh falls off the list, and Keegan. So, boys, good luck next week. There's a lot of tight races. You can still get yourself into the top dog conversation. You know, we'll see what happens. I took a L last week to Chris Martin. And, you know, if we look at this list here, I didn't even cover this, but TJ took the lead with 3 guys in this list. Chris, Craig, and I each have 2. And then we've got Jeff and Grubb and Russ with 1 guy each. So, fun stuff. Week 4 is in the books. Looking forward to week 5. Holla at your boy.
Dogs on the road. Thanks for coming through with that report for us, Joe. Let us know what you guys think about the dogs, top dogs. Any thoughts you have on it? I know he's just spitting facts, so I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are on it. Are you, for those people that don't have a dog in the top dogs, are you worried about that? Does that affect you at all? Does that make you eager to trade? For me, I like certainly looking at the standings. And I like seeing that I have I have three of the top 20 receivers on my team, things like that. That makes me feel better about my team even after a loss. So just curious how that may affect your thoughts on it. That's how it affects mine. So welcome back to the show. We have our guest, Craig, the Gooch, live from Pittsburgh. Craig, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here.
What are your thoughts on the game for tomorrow?
Oh man, it'll be interesting. I think if Ben can stay upright, make a few plays, at least a couple of splash plays, we should have a little bit of a chance. And I'm hoping that the defense can get after Teddy Bridgewater, because it sounds like that's who's going to be at quarterback for the Broncos tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
I think you're absolutely right. I think defense is going to be the key. That's my key as well. I think that the ultimate is the Denver Broncos defense. Von Miller getting after Big Ben. Big Ben is not mobile at all. He's about as mobile as a Kroger shopping cart, and it's not very mobile at all. Yeah, he's not moving. I like Big Ben a lot. Actually, I would say of all the Steelers of all time, Big Ben's certainly up there for me. Just something about him. Maybe it's because Elway is his favorite player of all time. Maybe that's a soft spot in my heart for that. But I like Big's. I like his game. Let's just put it that way. So
Father Time catches up.
It catches up with us all. So we'll look at predictions for the week. I jotted down some notes, and if you have any insight, feel free to jump in. But we'll make this quick for us. So Jeff, and this is current updated standings, by the way, post Thursday's game. So these are Yahoo's rankings and spreads, I guess, after Thursday's games from 2 nights ago for it. All right, so the projection, and these are post Thursday's games. Yahoo's current spread has me favored by 23 points over Grubby. For myself, the X factor that I see is for CeeDee Lamb, and that's because the last 2 games he's given me 2.5 and 5.5 points these last 2 weeks, and that's certainly not living up to the billing. It's not living up to where I drafted him at. Amari Cooper, though, continues to be banged up, and I think eventually Amari Cooper is going to have to step out for a game or two, and I'm banking on that to give me a big CeeDee Lamb game, maybe a game-winning performance that particular week. So that's what I'm waiting on. For Grubby, his X factor for me is Damian Harris, who's had 3 points and 3 points the last 2 weeks. Grubby trades away Joe Mixon, who right now is probably not going to play tomorrow, and even if he does, he's probably going to split time. So I'm guessing they'll sit him for tomorrow's game. But the trade is not working out for Grubby. I'm sorry to rub that in. It's not overly working out for me either at this point because of the injury to Joe Mixon. If he misses a week, it's well worth it for me though. But Damian Harris, 3-3 the last 2 weeks. He's had no Eli Mitchell in those 2 weeks. He's had no Sterling Shepard the last 2 weeks. Damian Harris is the key. Damian Harris can go out there and rumble and bumble, get him 20 points, stands a chance. You never know. So I think that's the key for him. Any thoughts on that matchup, Craig?
It's going to take another negative point performance out of Aaron Rodgers for Grubb to have a chance this week. So I like your chances against Grubb for sure.
Fair enough. All right, next matchup we have Darb. Darb is favored by 16 points right now over Dan. Dan and Darb, the battle of the bottom feeders right now, the 11th and 12th place teams. The good thing about this is whoever wins is going to take a significant step in the right direction. So even though those 2 guys are 1-3, they're not the only 2 guys in 1-3. If I remember correctly, right, we have a few. We have 4 total people in 1-3. So one of those guys, just by default, is going to go to 2-3. The other one's going to stay at 1-4. In this case, the key X factor for Darb is going to be Chuba Hubbard. So right now he's got 8 points last week in his first game with no CMC. It's going to be game number 2 without CMC. And it sounds like Christian McCaffrey is coming back maybe next week. There was slim hope that he might come back this week, which tells me he's probably going to come back next week. And for Dan, it's Miles Sanders, who's playing on his Eagle team and hasn't done jack shit. So he's got 6 points, 7 points, 5 points the last 3 weeks. And he was drafted to be a guy that was going to get him double figures. Maybe not 18, 19, 20 points a game, but I'm certainly sure that Dan was expecting 10 to 13 a game as a safe bet. That's not happening. Not catching the ball. He's got Gainwell coming in and taking some shine from him. And in this case, Darb, again, favored by 16 per Yahoo. And I think that holds true. I think Darby wins. Any thoughts there, Craig?
I think Dan's team continues to underperform. And I really think that Gary's team is just flat out better. So right now he's projected to win. Unfortunately, my counterpart from 2018 we joined the league.
Yep.
He might take another L, unfortunately. So I like Gary this week.
Yeah. Better days ahead for Dan, but not these days. So next matchup, Russ, currently favored by Yahoo over our Craig.
Oh.
We'll actually hold tight on that. We'll save that one for the end. So the one after that, Josh, favored by 9 over Chris right now per Yahoo. X Factor for Josh, Jonathan Taylor, 14 points in week 1, 14 total points combined in weeks 2 and 3, and then 20 points last week. Is he up? Is he down? And it's going to be the same exact scenario for Gary. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 8 points, 2 points, 10 total points in weeks 1 and 2. The last 2 weeks, 16 and 19. So he's certainly surpassed these last 2 weeks far and away what he did in the first 2 weeks. So with that said, overall, I like Josh's trajectory. Chris is not far off in points. Like I said, he was number 2 in points last week. So Chris has Zeke continuing to come on the come up. So I think Josh keeps it close. I like the projection of him by 9, but whew, man.
It'll be closer than that.
It's going to be closer than that. I think it will be a close matchup. I'm going to go with Chris for the win because I think they're going to continue to ride Zeke. I think Edwards-Helaire is better than the first 2 weeks showed. I'm going to pick Chris and a mild upset here. He wins by a touchdown.
Yeah, I'll go with Chris. Chris by 5 or less. As long as Zeke has a good performance and Clyde Edwards-Helaire shows up, I think he's got a strong chance. However, I am rooting for Najee Harris to make a difference tomorrow for non-fantasy purposes, but for Josh's sake, I think Robert Woods gave him a good head start to start the week, but give me Chris by 5.
Yeah, and the curse of fantasy, right? You got Josh, a Bengals fan, who's got to root for Najee Harris.
Yep.
Just the curse of fantasy. It's evil. So the next one up, speaking of Bengal fans, TJ is going to play James. So we got TJ favored by 19 points right now per Yahoo over James. James, the unfortunate blow. I think this is going to be the key factor that's unfortunately not going to get him a win this week, and that is Russell Wilson getting hurt on Thursday night. The injury, I'm sure it was a factor because we've seen that it did affect him the last handful of drives. But Russell Wilson exits the game. I think he finished with 8 or 9 points that game, and now he's going to be out for up to 8 weeks is what the report's saying. I saw he had surgery on it yesterday, I think it was. Maybe it was today, but either way, he had surgery already. His X factor, though, is he needs James Robinson. He needs James Robinson to get him 20-plus points for the 3rd straight week, and that's going to be a real big need for him. And the thing that the X factor for TJ, I think, is going to be Damian Williams, who he just received in a trade, excuse me, with Tradezilla, me. And I think if Damian Williams can go out there and get him 10 or plus points on that, then I think TJ wins primarily because of Russell Wilson. And you know what? I'm sitting here telling you that the X factor is Damian Williams. Really, the X factor is TJ's quarterback. Who's TJ got starting quarterback? Kyler Murray. I don't like to see that because I have got Kyler Murray in my other league. We won't talk about other leagues on this podcast, though. But Kyler Murray is actually really going to be the X factor for him now that if you boil it down to that way, because we all know that the quarterback is going to be the primary position for us, likely going to outscore the rest of your team by double digits over your next highest score in most cases where you want them to do something well. They're going to be your 20 to 30 or sometimes 40-point guys. So if Kyler Murray goes out there, heaven forbid, gets injured or shits the bed, and they turn it into a running game or whatever happens, and he only ends up with 12 points, that opens the door for James to come back, along with James Robinson having a good game. So that's the X factor, is Kyler Murray, now that I put some thought into this.
He's got Kyler Murray and Hopkins.
Yeah, he's got the combo. So that's the X factor. If they go out there and if they throw, Kyler gets 2-3 touchdowns, Hopkins gets one of them, game over, unfortunately. I think TJ wins that game by 10-plus points, but remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And as long as Alvin Kamara continues to I guess, underachieved for James. I mean, it's real unfortunate because he's a top 3, top 4 running back. He hasn't really done much this year in my mind, so that's kind of James's only hope this week.
Yeah.
So I also like TJ probably by 15 this week over James, unfortunately.
Okay, so we'll see how that plays out. We do have James in our studio audience today, by the way, so I'm sure he's not happy to hear this news, but we're not telling him anything you don't know. So,
sorry, buddy.
The final matchup, we have Keegan, not the final, excuse me. Next to last match, we have Keegan favored by 4 over Joe. Joe, the previously unbeaten team, who is struggling with points, but favorable in matchups. He's got one guy on his team this week that I'll talk about in a second that's going to be the key for him, and this may be a positive note on injuries where something actually worked out for him. But the X factor for Keegan this week for me is going to be the guy that he just traded for. He trades away. Who's he trade away? He trades away. He obtained Leonard Fournette, and he traded for Leonard Fournette. Sorry? Calvin Ridley. That's who it was. So he trades away Calvin Ridley, who's not even playing this week, to Gary, and he obtains Leonard Fournette. Keegan he offered me a trade as well for a running back. I couldn't pull the trigger on. Wasn't a terrible trade, but just wasn't right for me. And he ends up with Leonard Fournette, who the last few weeks has seen more carries, with the exception of the game in New England there. Didn't happen much for him. 9, 10, 5, and 14 are his first 4-week projections. And I think they're just going to start to rely on him more heavily, as they should. He's a big-bodied guy. I like him when he's moving. Seems like he dropped some pounds this year. Maybe he didn't drop any pounds at all. Maybe it's because he changed his number to a single digit. He looks slimmer. It's possible. But the X factor for Joe in this case is going to be James Conner. Now, I've seen that Chase Edmonds is injured, but I think as of right now he's still playing. He's probably got the questionable tag on him. But if Chase Edmonds does miss this game or leave early, James Conner would be the X factor for Joe in this particular week. So James Conner's already produced well, really well for him the last 2 weeks. 5 points, 3 points, 18 and 20. I can almost guarantee you that Joe missed out on at least one of those games because he wasn't prepared to start James Conner, as you wouldn't be. So James Conner, the former Steeler, the X factor for Joe this week. With all that being said, it's going to be a tight matchup. I'm going to stick with the trend and say that Joe's points probably kind of put the writing on. I don't know. You know what? Keegan's also possibly going to be without Cortland Sutton. I don't know who he's going to start there this week at that flex spot. I haven't seen any updates on Cortland Sutton yet. I know he just rolled his ankle, so more than likely he's going to play. But this one's anybody's guess. Something tells me that Joe hasn't been starting James Conner, and that contributed to his points being lower than we're thinking. I'm going to go with Keegan nonetheless. Keegan scores the fourth most points last week at 132. Joe can't sniff 132. I'm going to go with Keegan by, somewhere around the area of 4 to 8 points. I'm going to go with Keegan in the win.
I'll go with Keegan as well. I think a key factor in this matchup is Dalvin Cook, actually, for Joe. He's been hurt for quite some time, and he keeps giving it a go, but I think eventually they're going to have to put him on the shelf for a couple of weeks to get right. So I think if Dalvin Cook exits, by the second half, that's really going to hurt Joe tremendously.
Yeah.
And give me Keegan by 8.
Yeah, I think you're right. Dalvin Cook, that certainly hasn't helped Joe. We expect Dalvin Cook to be a 15 to 20 point a week guy, and that's not happening because of the injuries. And that's what scared me off from Dalvin Cook, even in the draft. If I had the number 1 overall pick, I had the conversation with Russ when he was kind of weighing back and forth a little bit who to take. I said, if I had the number 1 overall pick, I'm probably taking Derrick Henry, number 1 overall this year, even though he wasn't ranked number 1 by hardly anybody, just because he is the most sturdy guy out there, and that's what I like. If you're talking about Christian McCaffrey, who, yes, when healthy, is going to average 22, 23 points, and maybe Derrick Henry averages 17 or 18, give me Derrick Henry still because he's going to be there for you every single game. So that's where we're at with that. Dalvin Cook's injury, he's kind of the same boat as Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey hasn't been around as long as Dalvin Cook, but they're in that same range. They've both been there, 4 years or so, roughly, 3-4 years. And Dalvin Cook has seen his share of injuries, which is not good. speaking of injuries, I'm looking at Penn State having an injury. A guy down on the field right now, 20-10 Penn State in the third quarter right now. So I don't really give a fuck who wins that game. They're both undefeated. They're both ranked ahead of Michigan and Ohio State. So fuck them both.
Yeah.
Speaking of injuries, we do have some injury news from this past week. So we got Joe Mixon, who is likely going to sit out this game, but even if he doesn't, he's limping around a little bit for myself. So we'll see how long that injury impacts him. Cortland Sutton, we just talked about a minute ago for Keegan, questionable at this time. I'm guessing a rolled ankle means that you're going to play. They're going to wrap that bitch up and he's going to go. Russell Wilson, as we mentioned, now out 4 to 8 weeks. So James pivoted. I saw he picked up Taylor Heineke. So we'll see how Heineke does for him. Heineke he's kind of, it's funny that he's in the spot where he's at because Ryan Fitzpatrick is the same type of guy. The guy that you wouldn't expect to be a fantasy starter for you, but for some oddball fucking reason, he's going to get you 25 points 75% of the time. So IR today for George Kittle for Grubby. The bad news continues to roll for Grubb. I don't like to see anybody have multiple injuries. Grubby, we will not add an IR spot, so suck it up, Buttercup. The next one, David Montgomery, who got injured last week. So we'll have the first week of David Montgomery being gone for Chris. He's expected to be out 4 to 5 weeks at last check. And then Chris Carson for Russ, who is week to week at this point with the neck injury. So we'll see how Russ adjusts with that trade that he just had recently. So that's where we are at.
You're talking about Russ in his matchup?
Yeah, good point. The matchup of the week. I almost forgot. How could I forget the matchup of the week? This is why you need a co-host, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
So the matchup of the week, we have number one, first place, the Gooch Craig, who is up against Danger Russ, who, by the way, can't even spell his name right in the Survivor Picks. Fix your name, you fuck. Damsure Russ is how your name is spelled. So I don't know if anybody else caught that. That guy can't spell to save his life. Russ right now, favored by Yahoo by 4 points over Craig. X Factor for Russ, for me, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, we don't expect to be a top 3 fantasy guy every single week. And probably half the time he may even finish probably in the bottom 3 of our starting quarterbacks for the league. So Kirk Cousins is Russ's X Factor for me. He got 20 plus points in the first 3 weeks. Last week he shit the bed, only had 9 points. So I think Russ's team is going to carry him as far as Kirk Cousins can throw him. X Factor for for Craig, for me it's Travis Kelce. And the reason why I say it's Travis Kelce, he's drafted very high, second round pick for him. 21 points in week 1, 18 points in week 2, 11 points in week 3, and 5 points in week 4. So he's trending down. And then you also have Josh Gordon that's going to be coming in here soon. I don't expect Josh Gordon to be a big factor for the Chiefs, but it is another mouth to feed. So Travis Kelce is the one that's kind of bulletproof. Obviously, they've got a lot of weapons there, and they're going to do a lot of things. But if you notice, when we talked about Clyde Edwards-Helaire the last 2 weeks, 16 points and 19 points for Chris. The opposite happened with Travis Kelce, dropped to 11 and 5. So the 2 weeks that Clyde Edwards-Helaire did well in were the 2 weeks that he started to tail off a little bit. 11 is still a nice number to have for your tight end, but 5 is certainly not, especially not for him. So with all this said, I don't believe in Kirk Cousins, but what I do believe in is the law of averages. The law of averages say that an undefeated team is not going to stay undefeated long, and we just simply do not have undefeated teams in this league on a regular basis. We've only had one ever. I was close with one loss 1 year where Gary beat me. The only loss I took on my belt with the magical Peyton Manning year. But the only undefeated season we had we're in year 18, I think, of our league now. And the only undefeated season we had was clear back 15 or 16 years ago with Ferrelli. So, law of averages, I'm going with Russ and the minor upset. I only said minor upset because he's below him in the rankings. I'm going to pick Russ by, 5 to 10 points right in that area. That's my pick. What are your thoughts on your own personal matchup? What do you think?
I obviously don't think Russ is going to win.
No.
But easy for me to say. I am getting T. Higgins back from IR this week. Travis Kelce has underperformed the last 2 weeks, but
and how about that? How about T. Higgins coming back?
And I'm playing Russ.
And you're playing Russ.
Makes perfect
What a
sense
slap
to
in
me.
the fucking face, right?
So he's going to have to watch his team's wide receiver score points against him. So hopefully Travis Kelce turns it around and I get some points from him as well as Josh Allen in what hopes to be a shootout Sunday night. I know we were kind of hoping for a shootout between the Rams and the Seahawks, and that turned out to be a little bit of a disappointment. So hopefully it's the exact opposite come Sunday night, and Josh Allen and Travis Kelce both carry my team to victory in a continued undefeated season. So I'll say I win by 6 points.
6 points.
6
All right.
points.
There you have it. Since we're on the topic of predictions, I am wearing the Tyson Fury shirt. So we got the fights tonight. We'll talk about that as our very final prediction, as our bonus piece. Even though I'm wearing a Tyson Fury shirt, I think that anybody that's got a puncher's chance, the number one puncher's chance in the world is Deontay Wilder. I don't think that you face that guy 3 times and not get your clock cleaned. So with that said, I think the youth, I think the power, I do think that Deontay Wilder is going to end up with a knockout. He's going to end Tyson Fury somewhere in the middle rounds, 5, 6, 7, 8 round, at 5, 6, 7th or 8th round. I think that Deontay Wilder stops our boy Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, law of averages, takes his first loss. Law of averages against a guy that's knocking out the entire world is going to get KO'd. So that's my projection for the fight, Deontay Wilder by KO. What about yourself, Craig?
Man, give me Tyson Fury in the 5th round.
Tyson Fury in the 5th. Okay.
I don't know what kind of a goofy ass outfit Deontay's going to walk out with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the excuse is going to be at the end of the night for why he lost.
So
but
many.
He always seems to have an excuse.
So many.
I'm gonna roll with the Gypsy King tonight, winning this trilogy match.
There you go.
So.
Gypsy King for Craig, middle rounds. Deontay Wilder for myself, middle rounds. Zombie Jim, tiebreaker. What's going to happen?
I say
Louder.
Tyson Fury.
Don't be a fucking Dulce.
Tyson Fury, 8th round prediction for James. So we got 2 for Fury. We have 1 for Wilder. All middle rounds, somewhere between the 5th and the 8th. So stay tuned. We'll see who wins that fight tonight. Enjoy it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Be safe.
RTJ. The God killer, this Tokyo and I'm Godzilla. Playing blackjack versus death gun on the car dealer. Just bought a demon, I'm screaming about the car dealer. Last temptation of Mike.